Hey friends, thanks again for being here for the Chris Hendry podcast. I am him. And today we're going to have some fun because I'm going to look at changing your mind. I'm not sure if this is something that you think about a lot, but basically everyone on the planet at the moment is wrong about something or other. We don't hold exhaustive truth individually. None of us do. We sort of seem to have different perspectives on reality and through navigation of that squeeze out some form of collective agreed truth. There are scientific truths, of course, but that's not how we base our society or decision making or feelings. And so every day we're navigating things, carrying around ideas and shorthand heuristics and ideologies that will be wrong, if not in small details, then totally wrong at the core. And to navigate that, it's really important to change your mind. Sometimes when you realize that you're wrong about everything, you have to update your operating system. And I thought it would be cool to do a bit of thought leadership and go through the journey of some major things that I personally have changed my mind on through the years. It's not to say that I'm right about the positions I've landed on, just more I thought it might be interesting to bounce off in your own world and to think about what it is to change your mind and where you might be holding on to things too tightly, where any of us hold on to things too tightly, and why it's important to constantly iterate and review what our perspectives are on things and how we do things so that we can hopefully continuously improve. Because changing your mind is not something that I think you see often enough in the public sphere. And you can understand why there's a clear incentive if you have sort of nailed your flag, your colors to the mast on a particular topic, and you have a reputation and maybe success and following, and you've published books, and this is the truth. This is the way everybody needs to think this. And then maybe personally you come to the realization that that's not the case. It's hard to wind back. In fact, I think it's so hard that normally the cognitive dissonance wins over, which is you don't even look at the truth that you may be wrong about something that you've built the basis of your personality or basis of your career or basis of your selfhood around. But I think it's really important. I'm very sympathetic to why people don't change their minds in that situation, which is actually why I, despite being very mouthy and having a lot of ideas, have sort of shied away from some of the opportunities I've had to continuously publish opinions on things over the years. I've been offered money to do routine opinion pieces and things like that. And I think it's just a bit of a trap because if you are mining yourself for the things that you think, and this is kind of why I quit comedy too. I think if you're mining yourself constantly for the things that you think and putting them out there and being judged on them accordingly, that sort of forms a gravity that distorts how you're then able to navigate yourself through the fields of life, carrying those tools, which may be completely garbage. And do you a disservice. And I think this is something you see all the time. I don't want to name names, but if I think of any, I absolutely will. So we're going to go through some of the major times that I've changed my mind on topics through the years. I hope you enjoy it. As always, thanks for being here. A special strong thanks to my Patreon patrons. You can become one too. Just go to patreon.com/Endry. And I'll see you on the other side of this music, which I produce myself. Thank you. Going to start off with a quote today. It's one from John Maynard Keynes that I think about quite a bit. He says, "When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir?" And I like that because it's antagonistic and it's got a threat and it's, boys only, which rules. But the idea that we constantly encounter new information and it's not always easy to change our mind. And also we often crucify people who do change their mind. It's seen as a hypocrisy, which is somehow a huge crime when, of course, we should be valorizing people who are able to reflect upon the positions they've taken, recount them and come up with something new. That should be something that is impressive, but it's always like a gotcha moment for politicians if they've said something in the past and then they do something different in the present. Proof that they're lying rather than growing, because of course none of us are fixed in time and we're all constantly changing. So I hope that the next time you see that, you're able to at least emotionally disengage from the appealing idea that it's cool to catch people out for having two different positions often across decades. I remember Bob Brown said during the 70s, during the Franklin Dam protest, he said, why not just build coal power instead? And it was dragged out against him. I remember once in a Q&A, someone said, look, you said build coal power instead of hydroelectricity. And he just said, yeah, I was wrong. It was like 40 years later or something like that. And so there shouldn't be a shame to having different positions in things, even within a day, but especially over long periods of time where you would expect new information to emerge about any number of things. So I'm going to start with one of the major things that I thought and believed until maybe 10 years ago. I very strongly felt that if you want to be a citizen and if you want to become more intelligent over time, that you need to follow the news. And that's a position that, yeah, as I said, for about the past decade or so, I've gone completely 180 on. I think exactly the opposite. Obviously, you want to get information about the world and you want to understand what's happening if you want to navigate things effectively. And I think you do. But the idea that the news is a proxy for understanding what's happening in reality is a trap. And this is for a number of reasons. It's become more starkly obvious as the quality of that product has gone down significantly with internet, et cetera, et cetera. But the incentive for producers of news is to continuously have a product for people to look at regular intervals. That's one of their major incentives. No matter how much news happens in a particular day, a newspaper is going to be roughly the same size, or a news report is going to be the same length, or news articles are all going to be the same. But of course, the magnitude of things that happen in different days is as wide as anything could be. On one day, the entire universe might change, and then on the next day, relatively little will happen, but there'll still be the same amount of news. And not only that, but the things that are reported are things that are designed to be interesting or noteworthy of the moment, which means there's that shifting baseline phenomenon where you often will miss out the things that may be the most important in your whole life that happen over a long period of time, but slowly, so you don't really notice them. And I think this is something that I try to address in this podcast. I think that generally I'm interested in pursuing information that's under discussed so that it's adding genuine value to you, the sweet audience, but also because it's interesting to me and surprising when some of the major ones are under discussed. I think, just to pick one off the top of my head, I think if from last week to this week, everyone under 30 had what was considered to be a normal amount of sex and then they went to having basically zero sex, that would be in the news because there's like, well, what's happened? Has there been an accident? Is there a catastrophe or whatever? But because that's sort of happened gradually over a couple of decades, which is still not that long, it's kind of discussed in certain fora, but it's certainly not likely to make the daily news bulletin. When it's far more likely to be of interest and utility and direct relevance to the news audience than even some of the more important things that come across the news desk, like earthquakes or what have you in far-flung places. Yes, those are important too. But don't you think we'd talk about it if there's a traffic jam that stopped everybody from being able to have sex for a week? You'd hear about it. But it happens over a couple of decades, relative crickets. And it's the same across any number of issues. And also the news as a product itself is obviously incentivized to grab your attention, to sell advertising, or to justify the existence of state funding. And those two gravities as the dominant ones for the news that we receive in our lives are far too strong to produce quality products in terms of the information that you need to navigate life, to be an intelligent person, understanding what's happening in the world. I followed the Iraq War. I mean, I did an international relations degree, so I'm generally interested in geopolitical stuff. And I followed all the news of Afghanistan and Iraq for the decade and decades that they occurred. And I feel like I know almost nothing about what happened. In a given day, I would know, oh, well, there's an explosion at a marketplace. Oh, the troops, there's IEDs being used around, I can't even remember the names of these places, which is proof, right? I didn't take away the type of information that I could have taken away just by reading a 10-page article on it at the end of that decade. But it occupied plenty of my time, consciousness, and emotional energy at the time. Which didn't serve me to become more intelligent or better understanding of the issues in the world. Also, because they're entertainment products essentially, or to the degree that their function is to retain your attention, just as all the social media algorithms are. Their main function is to have you continuously look at them so that you're exposed to more advertising. The incentives are there to put out information that's shocking or extreme or incorrect or whatever it may be, divisive, so that you have a reaction to continuously look or to pursue more information or to go into the comments, wade into the comments yourself. And that's not, if you were to sit down your children and to explain a topic to them, you wouldn't do it with those mechanisms in mind. You wouldn't think this is the most important way to get my child to understand that that there's a fate on this weekend is not to 10 things you didn't know about the fate, or I don't know. I mean, these are dumb examples, but you're intelligent out there. I trust if you've listened this far. You've got concentration. You come up with your own examples. Yeah, so I ended up going from thinking that the news is an important thing to follow, and politics is an important thing to follow in exactly the same way. I thought that politics was where things happen, the decisions that inform your life. If you listen to my most recent episode 8 on Australian democracy, you'll get a sense for how the biggest issues, as they're discussed in politics, are not really covered well, if they are even covered at all. And so, yes, I think that following politics as well is it's fine if you do it. It's a horse trading sport. It's interesting. It's like following football or palace dramas or whatever, but you shouldn't conflate that with following what's happening in the world. I mean, you can, but I don't think it will give you the tools that you need to navigate what is happening in the world and to make your best decisions for your own interests accordingly, which I think is important. So I've gone 180, as I said, on news, following news and politics. I mean, 20 years ago, I would have thought that if you didn't know the name of the health minister or whatever, and you didn't follow the latest X bill, that it was a sign that you weren't intelligent. Now I kind of almost think the exact opposite. I think that if you're in that minutia and you don't need to be, you are giving your attention to something that is not going to give you the reward that you're hoping for from it. Again, just my opinion. I could change my mind on this, maybe even today. Who knows? But yeah, I think I've earned this one. Another thing I've changed my mind on in recent years, and very recently, in fact, is that it doesn't matter where you live. If you work hard at something, you can still achieve whatever you want out of it. I really thought this for some reason. Maybe this is an obvious one to you, and it seems insane, but I genuinely thought in the era of the internet, in the era of, you can access information, you can contact whoever you want in network. I thought that it doesn't really matter where you live. And this is personally, for myself as an artist, I thought it didn't matter where I live because anytime I ever had any mentors, and I did have some very senior and caring and intelligent and experienced mentors earlier on in my arts career who were often like, get out of Canberra. And I thought, no, it's fine here. Like, I like it. I can do the work that I want. And ultimately, if I'm doing the work that I want and I can do it to a quality that I'm happy with, then that will, build roads, et cetera, et cetera. That's true to a degree, but it's also, like, understandably completely not true in the sense that I think I said a few episodes ago, if you want to be the best, I don't even know what I said, soccer player in the world or whatever, and you stay in Tasmania, you're not going to be the best soccer player in the world. And this is the same for, maybe you have the capacity to be the best physicist in the world from the Maldives. Maybe you have that in you and you could have all the work and whatever, but becoming an improved version of yourself or being able to work on particular things in a particular way isn't just a product of you being a unitary cell striving. It's the product of how you work with others, the opportunities that creates, and how they snowball over time. And I guess the main reflection I had was like, oh goodness, the networks that you're in will radically change your life, and so you want to pick the ones that you are in very carefully. And that's not to say you're a loser if you're not the best in the world or something. Like, if it's not to say if you want to be an actor, you have to go to LA and win an Oscar, or you're not an actor. It's absolutely not that. Like, just more that in the suite of things that you consider for your own life, the networks that you're in and the environment that you're in are critically important, maybe more important than the unitary individual to some degree. It depends what the recipe is. So the same way, the change that I had in this is I now live in Budapest and love it here. I just love it. It's I miss all my friends from home very dearly, but the thing with modern living is I didn't get to see them that much in any case. Like, and so I live in a place where I can afford to live here a bit more and spend more time doing things like this, which bring me great joy and hopefully down the line professional reward as well, and hopefully a serving utility to you as well. That's the main reason that we're here. Yeah, I get to walk through the forest with my kids. I get to be in a place that's delicious and relatively cheap certainly compared to Canberra, where I was before. And there's a threshold level of cultural activity going on here that excites me. At the same time, I know that if I wanted to double down and just be a songwriter or just be a MC, broadcaster, or whatever this is, or thinker or whatever, I would be well served to be in a more integrated network of that, particularly with the English language stuff. Whilst there is that here, it's not the same. To exactly that end, actually, I went and did some stand-up comedy while I was here, and it was really fun. But I realized that I only have so many hours these days, and if I want to do stand-up, I want to do it with a professional aspiration. There's only, the ceiling here is very understandably not the same as the ceiling if you're in New York or whatever. And so if I seriously wanted to do stand-up again, I would do something which I didn't even think about in the past when I was living in Canberra. I would go straight to London, or I would go straight to just somewhere where you can go and perform all the time. It's not just because there's bigger audiences or there's more famous people there or anything like that. It's because of the dynamic that I mentioned earlier, which is your environment shapes you by allowing you to reiterate and allowing you to see more people that are doing the same craft and be aligned and not being an outsider and having to explain what you're doing, or just any number of small millions of things that are determined by where you live will shape the person that you are to a strong degree. And so it's actually really important to think about it and to make an active decision that supports all the things that you value and find that you feel good about in life. And I can't believe I was so blind to that for so long. I really thought that I could forge past that by sheer weight of, I don't know, luck or personality or something. I couldn't tell you how. This is not the introspection self-therapy hour. I'm just talking about times that I changed my mind. So that was a major one I've changed my mind on. Sticking with the Canberra flavor, another one I recently changed my mind on is and the network flavor and just and the dynamism of reality. I was really shocked to be completely wrong about Dave Pocock winning the Senate seat. He is a friend of mine, and we had a coffee or something. I don't drink coffee, so I won't lie to you. We caught up and had a chat about what his future might be after he retired as an athlete, and it was clear that he was interested in doing something. I mean, he's a big guy, not just physically. He's a total force of nature in how he goes after things and what he wants to get out of life, and has big aspirations for how to change the world. And I guess that's a gap between us. So it's fun to think about how that changes how we might pursue things in life. And so therefore, when he said that he was looking at running for the ACT Senate, I privately thought, I don't think he can do it. I don't think there's any way he can do it, because the ACT has 2 Senate seats, one Labor, one Liberal for years. The Greens came close with Lynn Hatfield Dodds in particular to knocking that over, but even still, to get the quota, because there's only 2 seats, you need to get a really high primary percentage vote. Yes, you've got a high profile, and yes, you've got a very good reputation, but are you going to knock over that many rusted on party voters, not only for Labor and Liberal, but for the Greens and the ACT? I think it's impossible. I to the degree that I even thought that the support and encouragement that he was receiving was just from people who were happy to have him in the arena, as a battering ram, rather than thought that he could win. Obviously, I was completely wrong, and I know I was shocked by that. It really made me reflect upon a lot of things, because in a way that's genuinely inspirational. I know people talk about seeing achievements as inspirational, but seeing the mindset of forging a specific goal like that and then working towards it as though it was going to happen and then achieving it was, genuinely inspirational. I don't know if I've ever even had the capacity to have that kind of boldness, let alone the boldness and then the subsequent execution. Very, very impressive. So I had to change my mind about what I thought was achievable. And then, he did it again. He not only did he win his seat, he won with a 20% swing. It's crazy. He's now the rusted on incumbent, and he's done that as an outsider, coming in on his own, off his own back of hard work and the force of his ideas, which are infectious because they're in part because they're iterative, because he doesn't pretend to know everything, and he's not afraid to change his mind. And I think those things are infectious because they're so rare, especially in politics, but they're rare everywhere and in the public arena. But in politics, they're so hard to find, which is why so often you find that the people that do become political leaders will spend most of their career not like they'll bang on to some sort of general type of value consistently, but they won't nail their colors to the mast of specific fringe issues until the Overton window makes it clear that they're safe to jump on board. And one great example of that was gay marriage. All the people who ended up voting for marriage equality in Australia just 5 years prior, certainly 10 years prior, almost all of them wouldn't have even mentioned it, let alone voted for it. So, which is a cool example of how we all change our minds. As sort of increment of society moves in particular directions. Yes, we're all constantly changing our minds, but those who have gone in public and said something, they have a reputational risk that they might not want to cash out all the time by publicly changing their mind, which is where you get the cognitive dissonance, where you don't want to admit that you're wrong, and so you refuse to look at the information that disproves your current perception of self and your previous world views. And so, yes, I hope you can see where we're all I'm pointing everything at the virtue of why we should be looking to find situations where we have changed our mind and venerate them just as much as we venerate instances where we find that we're proven right by circumstances when nobody else thought that we were. Back onto a more personal one, I used to think, and this is because of my personal proclivity, but I used to think in my bones that low conflict was a sign of good relations and orderly operations. But I saw conflict as a sign that things were not going well, and wanted to avoid it. I have, for whatever various reasons, a natural aversion to conflict, and as I think Australia probably a bit dangerously has a cultural appetite for avoiding conflict. I've talked about this a bit before with some guests on the podcast. But as I mentioned, everybody holds different opinions about everything. So conflict is inevitable if you're going to navigate things collaboratively, which you need to build anything useful in your personal life or in society. And so conflict is a healthy part of that. Obviously, you can have unhealthy conflict. But I think the way in which I saw conflict itself as being unhealthy was completely off, completely wrong. I had a wonderful relationship that I loved very much. And there was never any conflict. And I thought that this was a great thing and a sign that it was going well. But what it actually meant was it built up a fragility that I hadn't seen coming through the years, where by the time there was actually a point of difference that was a crisis in the sense that it needed to be navigated, we had no tools or language or capacity to work through that. And so it could only end. It built this fragility, it was fixed, and then something hit it and it could only break. Whereas continuing on with this finger-based metaphor, sorry for those who aren't watching the video, by constantly having conflict and working through things, and not to a degree, you don't want to only be in conflict, but by constantly being able to calibrate and navigate differing perspectives, which is what conflict is, finding a healthy and happy way to do that means that you are much more robust. And when that earthquake hits, you can move with it, because earthquakes hit us in all things all the time in life, as a metaphor. Or if you live in Japan, as a literal thing. So I now no longer believe that low conflict is good, even though in my soul, I wish that I could live the rest of my life without having another single conflict around anything. Now, this one's a big one, and I'm not exactly sure how to talk about it. It kind of could be its own episode down the line, and I think there's plenty of interesting people to talk to about it. But I want to talk about the idea that we're all the same, and that the follow-on idea from that anyone can be anything. Another instance where I was totally wrong about things, and I think this is a common belief, which is funny because if you interrogate it with even just a scratch, it collapses. But so often you hear people talk as though we are all the same, and therefore they think that anyone can be anything. And it's just so obviously not the case. But I acted as though it was for years, and I really believed it until quite recently, until embarrassingly recently. I think I really held the idea of all the platitudes that fall off of anyone could do anything if they put their mind to it, or deep down we're all the same, or anything anyone can do, you can do. It's crazy. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. It's an ideological infantilism. You see evidence of it everywhere, people thinking it. And I thought it too. I really thought that we're all sort of more or less the same, and okay, our experiences and opportunities can define us in different directions, but if you change those parameters, we can get anything out of anyone. So for example, if you give me the same opportunities that Elon Musk had, I don't even know what they were, then I could be doing all those things that he does. That's just complete rubbish. we're all extremely different. I think way more different than we reckon with in our day-to-day life. And that's cool. Like, that should be celebrated. That's fun. I can see why we have swung the pendulum in this direction, so to speak, because so many of the horrors of the 20th century and ongoing today were predicated off some of the worst extreme mischaracterizations of what the differences between people are and misunderstandings of what that meant. Yes, sort of, race-based hierarchies, race-based genocides. Yes, the worst extremes of X category of person is all like this and has X immutable traits that we understand and therefore must decide where we put in society. And often that will mean, oh, by the way, we kill them all or whatever. And I guess the antithetical idea to that, which occurred relatively simultaneously, which is everybody's exactly the same and should be treated exactly the same. And we need to conduct whatever genocide's necessary to make that the truth. Crazy, just absolutely crazy. Both ideological extremes are obviously insane, and we should know better than to dip our toes anywhere near any of those ideas by now. But it's still pretty prevalent. You still see faint examples of people suggesting that we are all the same. And one really funny one, I'm going to bring it up, is a quote from Eliud Kipchoge, the marathon runner who did the sub 2 hour one, depending on what you think about the rules of the shoes, etc. And he said, I want to bring it up exactly. If you believe in something and put it in your mind and heart, it can be realized. No human is limited. And I think I've also seen something from him talking about how anyone could do what he did if they had his mindset, and it's just so obviously unhinged. Like, it's a really nice sentiment, and of course, there's power to the idea that you can strive for much more than you are currently doing, and you could probably do a lot more than you think if you scaffold things over time with focus and discipline. But I mean, okay, I think we're the same age. I could spend the rest of my life trying to run, and I probably won't even be able to do a marathon, let alone a marathon around 2 hours. It would take me 9 hours to do one. And I can train and probably get that down to 3.5 or something with if I focus on it a lot. But I'm not. It's not mindset. It's not just it's not environment. It's not conditions. I genetically, am not able to win an Olympic medal for marathon running. Number of reasons, but I think that most of us can truthfully say the same thing. It's not just a case that we're all the same, and if we just apply ourselves or whatever, then no. We have different bodies, we have different genetics, we have different personalities, we have different brains, and they all add up to the very real differences that we see in the world. Yes, there's a big dynamism in certain things, and like, yes, if you really wanted to achieve being an astronaut and you spend the next 20 years trying to do that, you potentially could. I don't know. But also there'll be billions of people on the planet for whom that is not true. You could spend the next 20 years trying to be an astronaut and you won't be able to do it. Or whatever it might be. And so I think it's really important to... No, I don't need to proselytize. I'm just sharing something that I changed my mind on. I used to, for some reason, regurgitate the things that were related to that type of thinking and have them reflected in my political views as well. But I've massively changed my mind on that because it just collapses under any interrogation. And I can't believe how foolish I was not to see that immediately. I think it's because it's so common, or because I'm such an idiot. I shouldn't rule out that. Maybe the radical thing I'll change my mind on soon is that I'm an idiot. That would be nice. Actually, to exactly that same point, that anyone could be anything. I used to think, because I'm very creative, that the only thing that was stopping other people from being creative was mindset, environment, conditioning, etc. But I now realize that's not the case at all. People are totally different, and to the point where I actually kind of, this is probably not something you want to put on public record, but I kind of think that whatever it is that gives you the capacity to have a wild imagination, to conceive of things as they are not, and to move towards them, I kind of think it might be a genetic point of difference or something like that. No, not kind of. I do think it's a genetic point of difference. I don't know who's going to measure that to prove me wrong or right, but Yes, I strongly think that, to the degree where I sometimes encounter people where the idea of them being able to generate an independent melody on an instrument, even if they can play that instrument masterfully, even if they can play it masterfully, the idea that they would independently generate a melody is anathemic to them. Whereas for me and many of the peers, and I don't mean peers as a professional level, just people who have the same set of capacities, it's nothing to come up with something. It's and in exactly the same way, there will be other people that will have capacities to quickly understand something or navigate something or physically learn something or whatever in a way that it would take me a full day to do something that someone else can do in just a few minutes. And that's fun. But I had to change my mind around that because many years ago did this junkie, I'm not even sure if they're still around, online publication. They had this junket thing for, I guess, I don't know, sufficiently ADD people under 30 who were of an intelligence enough or annoying enough to thrust themselves into the public sphere. And we had to present something at this junket conference, and I got up and did a singing workshop with Beck Taylor, and saying, and I said, and I firmly believed at the time that like everyone can sing, and everyone can write their own songs, and I really still believe that more people can sing than realize that they can. But it's not the case that people can write their own songs, and it's also not the case that everyone can sing necessarily. Yes, because we're all much more different than it seems, which is good. Thank goodness. And I think that I think something that's accompanied for me that realization that we're all more different than we seem is a nice, even more than tolerance, but reverence for that difference, because I realize that the people who are the exact opposite to me in certain ways and maybe hold the exact opposite perspective and political views and whatever it is to me, I have a total respect for that, to the degree that I wouldn't want to remove anyone who has any opinions on anything from society, really, which is radical. I realize, but I think the reason that we're sort of so splayed as a species is because we are a hive species, and we really need the collective to be able to have that anti-fragility to solve various problems that may come up at different times. Because, okay, the way that I see the world and the things that I like to do might be completely useless now in an era of valuing quantified economic productivity and whatever. But it could be the case that in a different scenario, you want somebody who has the capacity to have a high abstract intelligence and low judgment or whatever to navigate, to notice that, say, the rain's falling there and it collects in this way and those animals engage like that, or whatever it might be. I just think that it takes all kinds for a good reason, including the psychopaths. Sympathy for the psychopaths as well, because they are also clearly dragging us forward in particular ways, or dragging utility out of corners that other people wouldn't look for, which I guess I suppose feeds into another thing I've changed my mind on, which is I used to want more people to see the world in the way that I do, and now I absolutely don't. It attaches to that how different we all are. The beautiful tapestry of us all, if we can navigate that with some baseline rules of respectful conflicts and equal kindness and care for each other's continued existence, which is rarer than you might think. It sounds like a really sort of hippie baseline ideal that everyone would agree on, but everywhere you go, people whose ideologies are built on compassionate, so-called compassionate foundational values, they'll be calling for the eradication of certain types of people or certain types of thinking or certain types of behaviors that don't necessarily threaten others explicitly. Yes, that's an outcome for me. I really value through this. Something I've changed my position on is that I have I'd say now, an outlier compassion for difference and enthusiasm for that difference. Not just for interest's sake, but because I think it's a critical thing for our species to continue to survive in the face of all the uncertain things that life brings. So because the issue of ideologies come up a few times, I want to bring up something that came across, which is not directly related to changing your mind, but certainly something you might want to reflect upon and think about. It certainly changed how I see a lot of things. And that is a study from neuroscientists recently who did MRI scans. It was pretty robust methodology. They were able to link low self-awareness to stronger brain reactions to moralized issues. So the self-awareness was not just like, oh, who I am in the world or whatever, but it was your capacity to make judgments. They measured how effectively you were able to understand how effective your judgment was. And people who had low metacognitive ability were more likely to have a quick snapshot and strong responses to moralized issues. And I think that explains a lot of what you see out there. A classic instance where changing your mind is a useful skill. It's a hyper example, but I feel so often you can become a slave to your younger self, where if you haven't interrogated the decisions that you've made along the way, you can end up living a life that was as a result of decisions and values of a former version of yourself that doesn't really align to where you are now. And one classic example of this I think of a lot, particularly for Australians, but it's all over the world, is to go when you're 17 or whatever, maybe you get a high school score, particularly people who get this, they think that, oh, I've got 99. I shouldn't waste that by picking a course that's maybe 70 or doing something that doesn't require a good school score at all. And instead, I don't really know what I'm going to do. So I'll go into some sort of law degree or law hybrid and then spend the next 5 years in an environment, maybe it's sort of okay and you're surrounded by other people that are doing the same. So you don't want to interrogate it too much. And then you finish that, and then the same sunk cost sort of question comes up, which is, well, I didn't want to waste my score. Now I don't want to waste 4 or 5 years of studying. I'll go on and get my qualification to practice as a lawyer or join a law firm or get a job that uses my law degree, whatever that may be. And then suddenly you do that career for a few years, 5 years or whatever, 10, you're 30, 35. And the question is, oh, look, I kind of enjoy this, but I don't enjoy it that much. Or I actually really hate this and I never really enjoyed it, but I don't know what else to do. You kind of find that you can be living through the virtue of not being able to change your mind. You could be living as a prisoner to a 17-year-old version of yourself that didn't know what they wanted to do in any case. And of course, the longer you go on in those misalignments, the more costly they are to correct and the more difficult those decisions are to make. For example, you can imagine if you have had a corporate law career for 10 years and you never actually wanted to do it and you don't enjoy it, it becomes harder and harder, or more and more expensive rather, to think, oh, I don't like doing this, I'm going to do something else, because you don't know what that other thing might be, or, the doors have closed for particular types of things that you might have wanted to do. And so it really is an important skill to have, to be able to change your mind quickly, because the earlier you realize that there is a misalignment and the quicker that you can act on that, even if it is really expensive at the time, it's less expensive across the course of your life. And similarly, rather than just being less expensive, the dividends and the fruit, the yield that you can get from making optimal decisions for who you are, you can have more of them and for a longer period of time. And why wouldn't you want that? Massive one I changed my mind on quite recently was having kids. I never thought that I would do it. I didn't really have the happiest childhood and didn't associate family as being a source of strength or stability or something. I don't know. I guess I didn't consciously think about it, but whatever it is, like many people, just assumed that I would never have kids and thought that having them meant a life path that stopped you from being able to do other things that you might want to do for yourself. And obviously that's true, but the way in which I thought that was true from how it is as an experience is like totally different. And being on the other side of the experience of now having kids, I've got two. I got 1 6-month-old daughter and a 2.5-year-old son. And I'm so glad that I changed my mind on wanting to do it. And also so lucky that I had a partner who changed their mind actually at about the same time. It was really serendipitous for us. And I just can't. It's one of those stupid things, because I know everybody who has kids says it, and I'm sure because it is such a big decision, it's very hard to get into the cognitive dissonance space of I really regret it or anything, although some people do, and credit to them for having the capacity to voice that. But for me, it's just been all-encompassingly positive in a way I could not have imagined, and opened up new dimensions to life where the things that I wanted to do or things I liked in my life about myself before having them, that I assumed would go away or be replaced, they've only become richer and more exciting. And yeah, I mean, it's a funny one because there are so many narrative reasons to form a perspective on how you feel about the idea of you having children in your own life, whether for or against. And yeah, it can be hard to navigate, but changing my mind around that has been easily the best thing I've ever done by like a huge margin. And obviously you can't change the past, but having them now, I just wish that I'd had them, honestly, without exaggeration, 20 years earlier. It would have been a nightmare for them because all the cool things that I got to do, I just wish I got to share them together now. Again, it's early doors, they're still young and I'm still new to it. So maybe I'll change my mind about it again. But that was a hugely transformative one for me. And I kind of feel like it's tedious because I don't want to think that people listening to this thinking, oh yeah, I should live my life like this guy. But I kind of feel honor bound, like to share that transformation of personal experience because I wish that someone had shared it with me. I don't think I couldn't list more than two people in my whole life across decades who had said, oh, you should have kids, you'll really enjoy it, which is crazy because if I discover a cool new ice cream place, I want to tell people about that. And this is like 10 cool new ice cream places all at once across all of life. Yeah. Just my personal perspective, obviously. And I have nothing but respect for everybody else's position on these things. Going on recent mind changes, I also recently changed my mind about complaining. I used to really not valorize it, but I used to really want to hold open a space for complaining in life because sometimes your situation sucks and the only thing you could do about it is complain, and that can ameliorate some of the distress. And there's so many narratives out there rejecting it and trying to take that away from you, and it's can be seen as annoying, etc., etc. So but sometimes it's the only thing that you have, and so I don't like to take that away from people. But in my personal life and how I make decisions for myself, I've recently kind of I haven't done it exhaustively, but I've tried to cut out complaining because I think that I noticed the times in life where I've really gone down the path of using complaining as a way of processing something, and I've found it to be really imprisoning. Like it keeps you trapped in a line of thought or keeps you trapped in a situation you're not happy with, or at the very least doesn't offer you the quickest path to transcending it. And I want to distinguish in my own conception of complaining between whining about something, voicing that something's not good, and using complaining as the valve to release the pressure of your frustration in a situation, because I think there is a difference. And I think I wouldn't want to take away from myself the capacity to say, oh, this is not good, to the people in my life as a way of recruiting help, because I think it's not a dead end to say, I am really struggling with this and it sucks, because, you can let people know how you're doing and invite them in to give you sympathy or help or rally around to help solve whatever the problem is. Distinguishing that a bit from the kind of complaining, which is like, oh, can you believe that the government's doing this? It's outrageous. When there's no second action. And so it's kind of the instances where complaining is the substitute for the action that I've really, it's not that I've changed my mind, maybe more that it's I've drilled in a bit and sifted out the ideas to get away from the shorthand. So yeah, I find that in navigating things for myself, there'll be so many things that I would have a sort of meta complaint with, like, oh, isn't this unjust or unfair or whatever it might be? And that would sort of just be the end point of engaging with something, rather than to think, this being the case, what do I hope to achieve? Like, am I going to change this situation? And if not, what can I accept about it? And how would that inform what I do? Say, for example, if I think it's really unfair that certain types of work aren't compensated, then do I continue to do those types of work and continue to complain about it and be unhappy about it? Or do I move away from them? Or do I just accept that, okay, this round's not going to be paid. If you're going to need something to be paid, look elsewhere. And so I think that there's a relationship to understanding what complaining is and how you do it that can really improve life. And that's something I've had to change my mind on, because I was pretty radically in the camp of complaining is the one thing that you don't want to take away, because it's your only recourse in that situation. But yeah, if I bounce against my own complaints with a bit of reflection, I find that I'm able to live a happier life as a result. But we'll see. Maybe that's also planting the seeds of doom. Again, all these ideas, they're not morally pure or superior ideas. I'm just sharing them as an opportunity to show how you can change your mind and hopefully improve your life, if that's something you want to do. So that's just a snapshot of some of the things I've changed my mind about. And I'm not sharing them because I think they're the most important ones, or even necessarily the biggest ones to me. There's any number of big things I've changed my mind on that I probably am too shy to share or embarrassed to yeah, too embarrassed to share because either I can't believe that I didn't think them, or I'm still figuring out what I think about things now. But this is not a tour of me. It is not a self therapy session. This is just an idea to demonstrate wielding the capacity to change your mind about something. It's often not our first instinct in how we see ourselves for any number of reasons, but it's potentially a superpower because the more you can calibrate in your own life against the weight of expectation, both from yourself and other people, to be less wedded to the idea of yourself needing to be the same all the time, because you're going to change anyway. So you may as well be proactive and choose those changes where possible, if they mean that you're going to avoid pain and suffering down the line, or you're going to benefit massively. Because, as I said at the very top, no two people hold the same opinion on anything. And that's for a reason. And as a result, no individual is right about everything. And that includes you, and it even includes me, God forbid. So yeah, I hope that this is a tool that you can take out into your life and maybe reflect upon, or share with other people. I don't know. If you do find this episode to be useful, please do share it with friends or enemies, if you think that they will like it. And yeah, there's a reason that all creators say like, share, subscribe, relentlessly follow, etc. It's because the algorithms really do drive everything of attention. And yeah, anything that you could do to help me, I will really appreciate it. And if you want to go to the ultimate step, you could consider joining the Patreons, patreon.com/ENDREY, Andrew. It's not just the podcast I put up there. I put up music stuff and other writings and artistic involvements that I have. Yeah, I would love to have you along for the journey. Thanks so much for listening to another episode, and look forward to seeing you next week. We'll be back into some interviews soon. And please get in touch if you have any ideas on anything about the podcast that you want to see me check out, people you want to hear me speak to, etc. I'm very open and just enjoy the dialogue of it all. So yeah, thanks. Hopefully over time we build a vibrant community. See ya.